Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to forensically examine a piece of conventional wisdom that's been repeated so often it is practically gospel at this point. I'm talking about the idea that hoarding gold and silver is your ultimate safety net during a true economic collapse. You've probably heard it yourself. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. But when we actually look at the historical, documented reality of dead empires and total economic meltdowns, shiny metal ranks incredibly low on the list of things that will actually keep you alive. So we're going to break down exactly why this popular prepper advice fails and look at what historically proven strategy actually ensures survival.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We'll start with the gold survival myth, then look at the anatomy of currency collapse. After that, we'll see why land and skills trump gold, followed by the true survival currency, and finally, we'll wrap up with the Amish Hedge strategy.
Section 1. The Gold Survival Myth. All right, let's step right into it and completely reset your basic assumptions about wealth, security, and preparedness. Forget whatever a spreadsheet says your net worth is today.
I want you to picture this. It's Sarajevo, 1993. The grid has completely failed. You're standing in what used to be a totally normal middle-class neighborhood, and your neighbor, a guy who was a banker before the war broke out, comes up to you. He offers you a real solid gold necklace. It's easily worth 2 months of his old salary. But he doesn't want cash for it. No, he wants a pack of cigarettes and 3 disposable Bic lighters. In a city under siege, with no electricity, no running water, and 0 food distribution, that gold is literally just a piece of shiny metal. You can't eat it, and you certainly can't start a fire with it to boil water so you don't die of dysentery.
Now, you might be thinking this sounds like some dystopian fiction, but it's not. This is the documented reality of a man named Selko Begovic who survived for over a year in that exact siege. When we look at his accounts, a pretty chilling pattern emerges. In a true collapse, gold provides almost 0 immediate survival value. Those who held only precious metals found themselves completely desperate, parting with their supposed wealth for pennies on the dollar to people who possessed actual everyday utility.
Section 2. Anatomy of currency collapse. To really understand why this happens, we have to look at the mechanics of how money actually dies. Because, let's be real, the most dangerous myth out there is that you're going to have plenty of time to prepare.
Just look at this staggering number, 1,000,000%. That was Venezuela's hyperinflation rate starting around 2016. The transition from a functioning, money-based economy to pure barter doesn't take years, folks. It takes months, sometimes even just weeks. Prices were multiplying by factors of 20, 30, even 100 almost overnight. The national currency, the bolivar, became so entirely useless that citizens mockingly started calling it the dead bolivar.
And how did the government respond to this chaos? Well, they removed high-denomination bills from circulation and gave citizens exactly 72 hours to exchange their currency before it was literally declared illegal. Imagine being in that situation for a second. You have just 3 days to convert your entire life savings before the government declares that the paper in your wallet is completely worthless. That is the sheer devastating speed of a collapse.
So, when the paper dies, economies just instantly snap back to pre-industrial barter, and suddenly, only utility matters. In Venezuela right now, fishermen are exchanging their daily catch directly for rice and bananas. In the coffee-growing regions, hardware stores are literally accepting coffee beans as payment. 300-kilo sacks of coffee will trade for 200 liters of gasoline. Why? Because coffee beans are standardized, you can consume them, and they have immediate real-world use value. A modern collapse strips away all those complex financial instruments and leaves only raw, tangible utility.
Section 3. Land and skills trump gold. If currency dies that fast and gold is virtually useless during the initial shock, what actually generates value when cash disappears? Well, to answer that, we have to look backward at history.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast we saw during the Great Depression. On one side, you had destitute urban workers in Dubuque, Iowa facing severe hunger. Thousands lost their jobs, and even those who kept him saw massive wage drops. They were starving because they had 0 productive capacity. But contrast them with rural farm families. Many of these farmers had literally 0 cash income, yet they survived beautifully. They had abundant food from vegetable gardens, milk from dairy cattle, and eggs from chickens. Farm wives were making clothing out of flour sacks. They thrived because they had productive capacity.
And look, this mechanism is just pure math. Productive assets act as genuine insurance because they generate value regardless of what the economy is doing.
During the 2008 to 2009 financial crisis, while the S&P 500 took a massive 46% nosedive, the value of farmland actually went up by 17%. Farmland provides stable income, whether that's through crop sales, rental value, or direct food production, and it is completely independent of what paper assets or even gold are doing.
But hey, it's not just about owning land. It's about what you can actually do with your own two hands. During the Depression, the skills that commanded the highest value were the ones addressing fundamental human needs. We're talking food preservation, mechanical repair, carpentry, medical care. A skilled carpenter or a nurse represents an incredibly valuable income-generating asset. But unlike a stack of gold bars, you cannot stick a carpenter in a vault. The skill exists in the person. It can't be stolen, and it can be deployed whenever you need to trade for goods.
Section 4. The true survival currency. If we know that utility is the name of the game, what are the surprising, everyday items that become the absolute highest valued assets in a crisis? Let's find out. And this brilliantly illustrates Selko's profound insight from his time in Bosnia. He highly recommended owning 1,000 cheap Bic lighters over an expensive fuel-powered generator. Think about it. A generator costs thousands, makes a ton of noise, requires scarce fuel, and acts as a massive beacon for thieves. Lighters, on the other hand, they're silent, highly portable, and extremely cheap to acquire right now. They provide fire for heating, cooking, and light, which are non-negotiable needs in a siege environment. Small, practical items address fundamental needs vastly better than spectacular, vulnerable technology ever could.
The exact same rule applies to medicine. In the parallel collapses of Zimbabwe and Venezuela, basic hygiene supplies and medicines absolutely exploded in value. A single dose of amoxicillin on the black market could command weeks of wages. A bar of soap that cost 50 cents before the war traded for a dozen eggs during the Bosnian siege. I mean, think about it. A pound of silver is absolutely useless if you need to treat an infected wound. Basic antibiotics and hygiene supplies literally mean the difference between life and death.
But here's the kicker, the most overlooked asset of the whole shebang. Meta-analytic data covering over 300,000 participants shows that individuals with strong social relationships have a 50% increased likelihood of survival compared to those with weak ones. 50%. In a collapse, trades happen privately. Neighborhood organizations and mutual aid networks coordinate responses and pool resources far better than an isolated household ever could. Social capital literally is survival capital.
Section 5. The Amish Hedge Strategy. This brings us to the climax of our explainer. We've forensically examined the data from history's worst economic disasters, and now we're going to introduce a pragmatic, 5-part solution derived from all this evidence.
First off, why do we even need this strategy right now? Well, take a look at the macroeconomic reality. For the first time in civilized history, 100% of the world's currencies are unbacked fiat, meaning they aren't backed by gold or anything tangible. With the United States sitting on $38 trillion in debt and a highly interdependent global economy, the destruction of major currencies might not happen in isolation. We could very well be looking at a simultaneous domino effect, a true systemic failure.
Let's move to the strategy and see how this builds your ultimate defensive posture. Step 1. Acquire productive land, even if it's just a small vegetable garden, to create food capacity. Step 2. Develop practical, non-stealable skills like carpentry, first aid, or animal husbandry. Step 3. Accumulate practical goods with long shelf lives, like those lighters and antibiotics we talked about. Step 4. Build tight community networks based on trust. And finally, Step 5. Hold precious metals. Notice that gold is the absolute last step here. It only provides optionality after the crisis stabilizes, but it does absolutely nothing to keep you alive during the initial shock.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. When the mathematical reality of fiat currency finally catches up to the system, which side of history will you be on? Are you going to be standing in line, gripping a piece of useless paper or a shiny piece of metal, wondering why a loaf of bread suddenly costs 200 billion marks? Or will you be the one calmly, trading privately, using eggs from your own chickens to get the supplies you need? The evidence is overwhelmingly clear. It's time to diversify into practical assets and real skills before you are forced to.